Hi everybody, my name is Bhavishya, and in this lecture we'll see the criteria of electing designated router and backup designated router. So, when, whenever a router participates in OSPF, we check its interface priority. As you know the fact that when designated router and backup designated router get selected per interface, right? Not for the whole router. Let me repeat it. Whenever DR or backup designated router is elected, it is elected per interface, not for the whole router. Okay, so whenever a router participates in OSPF, we check its interface priority. So the default value, the default value that we use for the priority is 1. Okay, now it ranges to from 0 to 255. Okay, now the fact is we use 0 when we don't want it to participate in the selection of DR and BDR. When we don't want it to participate in DR and BDR selection. Okay, and when we when we want some router to become designated router, then we give it higher value, like let's suppose 10, 20, 15, all the way to 255. Right? We do it manually to increase the priority level. Now let's see it with some examples. So we have two cases. So let's understand with the case one. Let me pull out the topology for it. Okay, so this is our case one. This is our case one, where we have different priority values for each router. A different priority value. Let's suppose for router 1 the value is 3. Okay. For our router 2, let's suppose the value is 2. Okay. For router 3, let's suppose the value is 1. Now, wait. Now, by virtue of these values, what we'll interpret out of it is as router 1 has the highest value, priority value on its interface, this fast Ethernet, let me fast Ethernet 0/0. So in this case, it will become this R1 will become our designated router. Okay, let me use a different color for this. Right, this will become designated router. When we talk about R2, as it has the second highest value in the topology, it will become backup designated router. Backup designated router. And as in this topology, R3 has the lowest priority value, it will become DR other. Okay, DR other. Right. So this was the case one when all of the values were different from each other. Now, just in case all the values are same in that how we will select DR or BDR. Right. Let us see. So in case 2, wait. So in case 2, let's suppose come here. let's suppose the value of R1 is 1. The value for R2 is 1. All the values are default, let's suppose. Right. Now, in this case, what will happen as the value of all the interface priority interface is same, we will see the highest router ID. So for the case 1, so for the case 1, so for the case 1 where priority priority value is same, there what we will see highest router ID, right? Yes. So let's suppose for R1 the router ID is 1.1.1.1. Okay, let me change the color for it. For R1 this is the router ID. For R2 let's suppose router ID is 2.2.2.2, and for R3 let's suppose the router ID is 3.3.3.3. Right. So in this case, the highest router ID is of R3. Right. So due to this, R3 will become designated router. Okay. As router 2 holds the second highest router ID, so it will become backup designated router. As R1 has the least value for our router ID, R1 will become DR other. Right. Now, if I want to, and also as R3 has become designated router here, so only R3 will generate type 2 LSA. Other than R3, R2 and R1 will only generate type 1 LSA. Okay, yes. And also, let's suppose I want to eliminate R1 from the race of getting elected as DR or PDR. What I will do is I'll go and manually change the value of priority value from default value from 1 to 0. So by virtue of this, it will not get participated from the election of DR and PDR. Right. And now we have this fight over DR or PDR. As both of the values are same, then we'll see the router ID for the highest router ID as 3.3.3.3 is highest one. R3 will become DR and R2 will become backup designated router. Right? Yes. So to conclude this concept, DR and BDR get selected per interface, as you can see, right? Not for the whole router. And the next concept is to extend over what I've said this to give an example of what exactly it means. Let me take an example. Okay, so for the better understanding of the sentence that I said, that designated router and backup designated router elect get elected slash selected per interface. What does this mean? Let's suppose for fast Ethernet 1/1 of router 4, we elected R4 of this interface as backup designated router, let's suppose. Right? There may be a case. let's suppose for R1's fast Ethernet 1 slash 0, we elected it as, let's suppose, designated router, right? For fast Ethernet 0 slash 0 of R4, there is a case we may have elected it as designated router other, right? So this may be a case. Or if, or there may be a case, let's suppose, that I don't want this fast Ethernet 1 slash 1 of R4 to be get participated into election of designated router and backup designated router. So I'll go and manually change the value of the priority interface priority value as from default value of 1 to 0. So this interface fast Ethernet 1 slash 1 of R4 will not get participated into election of designated router and backup designated router. Now let's suppose I want to make this interface fast Ethernet 1 slash 0 of R4 as backup designated router. So I'll do nothing. I'll just uh, let it be the value of priority value to the default value as 1 only. Now I want this particular interface fast Ethernet 0 slash 0 of R4 to be designated router. So I'll increase the value and I'll increase the chance of it to become designated router. So what I'll do is I'll go and change the value of it manually to, let's suppose, 50. So the chance of fast Ethernet 0 slash 0 of R4 will become higher to become designated router. So by virtue of these values, this fast Ethernet 0 slash 0 will become designated router due to the highest value in the topology. Our PC3 as having 0 value, as it will not get participated into the election of becoming designated router and backup designated router, it will become DR other. And as PC2 is holding the initial value or the default value, it will become designated router as it has the second highest priority value. So this was the concept of the criteria of how we elect designated router and backup designated router. I hope you enjoyed. See you on the next one.